Hi there, I'm Brigadier General Pete Fessler. I'm your moderator for this particular panel. Our topic of discussion today is leadership in crisis and corporate leadership in crisis. And I'm sure each of us have led our organization through crises in the past, but I suspect, like me, that in December of 2019, you had no idea what was in store for you or your company. And I'd like to use your experiences over the last 15 months or so with COVID to get after that broader topic of leadership in crisis. Before I get going, let me do a couple quick introductions of our panel members here. Ms. Claudine Zakowski she's the Global Disaster Relief Coordinator and the Director of Children's Safe Drinking Water Program at Procter & Gamble. We've got Mr. Scotty Blankenship, Senior Director of Procurement at Tysons Foods, and Mr. Justin Land, Global Citizenship Program Officer and Northeast Public Affairs Manager at the Dow Chemical Company. So to kick this off, I'd like to give each of you a couple minutes to do an introduction beyond what I just did right here. Introduce yourself, talk about your organization a little bit, and then let's have you start off with any introductory remarks that you'd like to make, and then we'll go right into the questions. So Claudine, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Claude Zakowski, and I work in our corporate communications group. I lead our corporate community impact programs in regards to our global disaster relief work, our children's safe drinking water program, and in-kind donations.
And Justin.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm Justin Land, a program officer at Dow and our global citizenship team, and I lead our volunteer efforts around the world in addition to our philanthropic response with disaster relief.
Thanks. And Scotty, over to you, please.
Yes, good afternoon and thank you. I'm Scotty Blankenship. I'm with Tysons Foods. I am the Senior Director of Procurement, and I'm responsible for procuring all of our facilities needs for personal protective equipment and such, ensure that we keep our workers safe.
Thanks. So let's move on to the discussion. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a series of questions to each of you. I think that this will be most valuable if we treat this as a discussion. So if there's something during the comments of one of your colleagues that resonates with you or that you'd like to make a comment to follow up on, please feel free to do that. I think it'll make the discussion a lot better if we turn this into a discussion rather than just a hub and spoke question and answer session. So let me kick off with the first question to get things started. I mentioned it before. I'm sure each of you have led your organizations through crises, but COVID certainly challenged all of us. Can you talk about your company's response to COVID and describe how this response differed from the way you or your organization has responded to crises in the past? So I'll start off, Claude, with you, and then we'll just go from there.
Thanks. So yeah, I've been working in the disaster relief area for some time and would say that I feel like we had a pretty good handle on being prepared and had the right protocols, but COVID, I think for all of us, is certainly a game changer in that respect. And I think quickly we had to establish some new core principles for the company and how we were going to approach our overall response. And we did that, and we continue to use these core principles today. So they're quite simple. One is protecting our P&G people around the world, serving consumers, and supporting communities. And I think everybody will agree. The first priority for any company is really ensuring the health and well-being of our people. And although many of us could work virtually, those in our manufacturing facilities around the world obviously could not. So we had to quickly establish the right safety protocols, ensure we had PPE and rigorous cleaning procedures and so on. For those of us in the virtual world, it was establishing new network and collaboration tools and capabilities. And then the company thought through new enhanced benefits for a virtual world, wellness resources, offered free COVID testing for employees, virtual doctor visits, and so on. The second, in terms of serving consumers, many of our products, such as toilet paper, obviously were in short supply. And so that meant, ramping up to 24/7 operations so that we really could serve our consumers by ensuring that they had access to, the health, hygiene, and cleaning products that people were relying on in COVID more than ever. And so it's a testament to our product supply organization that they were able to really step up and overcome a lot of the challenges that were occurring throughout the pandemic. And lastly, supporting communities. We have a long history of supporting communities in need. It's a foundation of our company. It's an area I feel very privileged to get to work on every day. And we did that by really focusing on frontline workers and those most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And our response included, monetary grants, PPE supplies, product donations by more than 50 brands in over 55 countries in collaboration with more than 200 relief organizations.
Thank you. Justin, let's go over to you, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what's unique about COVID is, you mentioned what started in December 2019. It really seems like that distant memory, but as it became the global pandemic, COVID became a connector like no other disaster that I've seen. It truly impacted every single Dow community, every single Dow site, every single employee, but also our customers and our businesses became connected because of this global pandemic, and still very much so connected. And so, there's two big things that we have seen with COVID that I would say is actually consistent with other disasters. One is just our employee base, how strong they are in wanting to help solve problems, whether they're local problems, whether they're global in nature, in our labs or in our communities. And so this team of employees, we have about 36,000 employees around the world. This connection point brought together our businesses and geographies and communities in really new ways that we've never seen before in other disasters. The other is just that focus and perseverance of wanting to be resilient to solve. And so some of the things mentioned earlier that I would say is somewhat consistent with us at Dow as well. First was the importance of safety and business continuity. That number one priority every single day is safety. If we run safely, then we shouldn't be running at all. And so that's been the core point in any disaster that we've seen, but very strong here. The other is really figuring out, how do we operate safely? And so we developed some corporate standards that are science-based to ensure that we're able to operate when appropriate. And we have shared our return to workplace playbook externally. And so this is available for anybody to download on our website. But then the other pieces is that we do play a very critical role in delivering solutions that are needed in this pandemic, from medical equipment and infrastructure, medical supplies and PPE, and that personal and home hygiene and sanitation pieces as well. And so the raw materials that we manufacture are critical to many suppliers and customers around the world. And then the last piece, and I think there's probably not a company out there that wouldn't say this, is that support of local and global communities. And so we've seen this on a small scale or large scale disaster standpoint, but we've had to be agile. We've had to learn in new ways of what emerging needs are. I mean, we recently have really gone on a deep dive around mental health. And this is not a space that we focused on historically. And so we've had to meet new partners, invest in areas that are very needed right now. And so, it's been an interesting time and it's not over, but I think the muscle memory that we've gained over the course of time has been very helpful.
Thank you, Scotty. How about at Tysons?
Yep. So very similar to my esteemed panelists here, Tyson recognized early on that COVID was going to have a major impact to our supply chain. And, in the world of food production, that it's critical to get those pounds of meat and other products to the consumers. And so we put together a very concerted plan to ensure that our plants would not be interrupted, yet our workers would be safe. And so we immediately created a task force early January and began communicating with various government agencies, including the CDC and USDA, OSHA, and others. We wanted to understand what it was going to take to keep our plants open through proper sanitation methods, increase personal protective equipment. We knew we had to get product here to the U.S. quickly. We chartered multiple jets to move PPE from China and other countries to the U.S. quickly so that we could keep our lines up and running. And we worked very closely with the many government agencies such as DOT to help them understand the need for keeping places open to service our truck drivers as they move product, animal feeds, et cetera. And most importantly, we saw a very significant impact to the production of cryogen, CO2 specifically, which is a byproduct of ethanol production. As we saw the demand for gasoline fall, we worked actively with various government agencies to ensure that we kept facilities up and running so that we could produce food. We worked very closely with each plant and community to ensure that our workers felt safe and good about going into various facilities, and put together a very generous bonus program to ensure these essential workers knew that their work was appreciated.
Thanks. In all three of your comments, I noticed that taking care of your workforce was top of it, and how you responded to ensure you were still delivering your goods to obviously a needing public. Claude, you were the only one that mentioned you felt that your organization was prepared. I'd like to dig into that a little bit. Are there things that you, looking back now in retrospect, that you believe you could do differently to better prepare your organizations for some type of an event like this in the future? And Justin, I'll go back to you to start this one off.
So that's a tricky one of the preparedness side. And, I think with Dow, a lot of our work is we need our facilities from the manufacturing side of manufacturing what we send to our customers, the supply chain side of things, and then just the innovation side, really needing the R&D capabilities within our labs. And so very early on, we really worked with local governments to ensure that that the industry was part of the critical infrastructure to be able to make sure that employees could continue to deliver safely. But also we had a significant amount of workforce, including myself, that very quickly relocated to home offices or quickly setting up home offices. And so, as we've gone on, I would say over the past 15, 16, 17 months, there's been much greater emphasis on the well-being side of things and really making sure that employees are taken care of. And so it goes back, I think, to the muscle memory of how you connect with employees on a day-to-day basis. And so at Dow, we invested a lot on communication and transparency around our return to work playbook, and then also just on the well-being side. And so I think the more you can build in some of these mechanisms to connect with employees, to engage with them, but also empower employees as well, and especially the leaders that support a lot of employees out there, is helpful in the long run.
Thanks, Scotty. How about back over to you?
Yes,
things to do to prepare ahead of time.
Yeah, we definitely had some learnings. I think the biggest thing that we've come to realize is this: much of the world, moving to a just-in-time supply chain and delivery system really exposes the gaps when you have a black swan event such as this pandemic. And so we have made some significant changes in our inventory management practices, especially when you are sourcing goods or materials globally, and that there's could be significant impact to shipping times due to ocean freight, containers, other things that may be disrupted by various events. So Tyson has made a concerted effort to identify what are those key raw materials and goods that are required to run our facilities to keep our team members safe, and that we have built significant inventory stateside that is easily accessible, that we can move quickly about the country to take care of any potential needs.
Thanks. Claude, you were the only one that mentioned feeling like you were prepared ahead of time. Anything that your company would change on the looking back?
Well, I think similar to what Scotty and Justin said, there's always lots to be learned and things that you will change going forward. But I feel like fundamentally one of our, the strongest things we had in place going into COVID were our partnerships with our public-private, and that really was the foundation of all that we did. We had those long-established partners that we could talk to, that we could work together with to really respond the most efficiently and get aid where it was needed the most. And building on what Justin had said about people, one of the things is when you give people a challenge, they will often rise to that challenge. As I'm sure many experienced, there were shortages of PPE and very difficult to get a hold of that, which is critical to safety and so many other things. We leveraged our internal capabilities of our R&D, engineering, manufacturing folks, and put the challenge in front of them. Can we manufacture our own face masks? Can we produce hand sanitizer and face shields? And people stepped up. They found plans for how to do things. They retrofitted modified equipment. They got lines up and running in record time to be able to produce those types of supplies, which we could use both internally as well as donate to, healthcare facilities and frontline workers.
Thanks, Scotty. I'm going to come back to you on a different topic. You mentioned the lessons you learned with respect to supply chain, and I think that's a common theme in all of your answers, the challenges associated with that. I've heard in my career the quote over and over again, never waste a crisis, meaning there's always something that you can learn out of the situation. So, and even in the worst of times, at NORAD and US Northcom, we found that the lessons we learned from COVID had a broader applicability to the full range of things, military and non-military activities that we're responsible for. So, Scotty, I'd like to start with you and ask that question. What lessons did you learn from COVID that you can more broadly apply across the full range of potential crises that you see, including that black swan event that you talked about?
Yes, absolutely. And the biggest thing is definitely involving supply chain, quick response time, the ability to basically move mountains overnight, and that's what we had to do. I heard Justin talk about muscle memory and the things that we learned and did during COVID. Absolutely would apply in future events. It's funny, this past year, not long after we're just beginning to recover from COVID, we had Winter Storm Uri that hit Texas. Definitely impacted our supply chain in a big way. But we had already had some very significant learnings from COVID about moving to various other suppliers, looking at the global supply chain. We had found various ways to move goods across the country. And so we applied those. And again, as I mentioned earlier, inventory, while, in today's society and the just-in-time environment, inventory is often looked at as your money tied up in an asset. We have found that it's also a good way to mitigate risk in certain situations. So those critical items that you're going to need every day to open a facility, those are items that we look at having on hand in some spot that we can move quickly across the country and service our facilities.
Thanks, Justin. Let's go back to you.
So, I think for me, there's probably three key learnings. And the first is the importance of team. This is a fundamental principle within emergency management of making sure that the right stakeholders are at the table. And I think COVID really showed how important this was at Dow, especially because of the scale. Bringing together the functions, our businesses, but geographies really showed how important that communication was to not just benefit our customers and help our customers, but going back to the employee piece as well, and making sure that dialogue was happening. The other is around the importance of providing that global vision and what the company stands for, that can be applied locally. And so as we've seen with COVID, and I'd say more and more today, as we look at returning back to the office, it's going to look a little bit different everywhere because of the local guidance that exists, the data that exists as well. But if we're able to provide that pathway, it gives us something that we can all strive for. And I think a huge testament to Dow for a lot of the investment that we made early on in setting this vision forward. And then the last piece, and Scotty, I think you kind of mentioned this as well, is just around the agility side of things. And having that right team, you can move a lot faster than you might on a given day. And I think with COVID, we've been able to do things and broker new partnerships, if you will, or connect with customers in new ways because of how agile we've been able to be during COVID. So a lot of lessons learned, and and still a lot of work to do.
Those are great points. Ma'am, over to you. Last words on that topic.
I think similar to what Scotty and Justin said. I mean, some of the key lessons, I think having the right leadership in place and really setting for the core principles and how the company is going to frame our response helped guide us the whole way through. It was very clear what everybody was working towards and what our priorities were. I think communication, clarity of communication, both internally with our employees. We had, an incredible group that was continually keeping everybody updated on what was going on, what the company could do, and how we were supporting communities around us. And I think capability, the internal capability of our organization, we can't underestimate what brands are able to do, utilizing our marketing expertise and advertising for public health messaging and so on. We were able to tap into so many things that we hadn't previously used during other disasters. I think to really make some important and meaningful impacts, both in the public health arena as well as supporting, international relief aid efforts.
Well, let me dig down on something that you talked about there, and I'll come right back to you for the answer on that. You said having the right leaders in place to be able to respond. That means individual leadership. So I suspect we all led in ways that we never really imagined. I think that the quote of 2020 will likely be, "Sorry, I was on mute." Leading by Zoom or leading by Teams is a challenge. Can you talk a little bit about how your leadership style changed, or the leadership styles of those that you work with changed to deal with COVID and the unique challenges associated with that?
Yeah, I think agility is the key word, and being able to adapt to situations, not being able to be in the same room with people, and yet, needing to be connected globally, with other parts, other countries, and partners around the world. So it requires a lot of agility, and it's been a great learning experience. I take what I've learned, and I try to do the best I can moving forward to be prepared and be ready when something else like this comes along, which I hope it never does.
I hear you. Scotty, how about you?
Yeah, when I look at leadership, I look at what Tyson did as a company, and they put feeding America first and team member safety ahead of profitability. They did what it took. We went through some extraordinary circumstances and costs in order to outfit our plants quickly to meet the demand. All again to make sure that Americans had access to food, while keeping team member safety as the number one aspect of that.
And Justin?
Very similar to Scotty here on the safety side, that has remained the number one priority, and we're very vocal about that internally, but also externally as well, but also the role that we can play in the world and with our customers and the products that Dow Innovation goes into. And so we've really worked hard at all of that. We've run fast, probably failed faster, but kept moving the ship to work, with our communities and with our customers as a whole.
Thanks. I'm showing us with about 2.5 minutes left here, and I don't want to leave dead time. So I'm going to pick, Claude, one last one for you.
Yeah.
And that is, this has been a national tragedy, obviously. It's been a global tragedy. 4.2 million dead around the world, 620,000 dead in the US. But even in these times, there are things that are silver linings. There's little things. Maybe it's more family time. Maybe it's expanded options for at-home work. Maybe it's a better understanding of the global challenges. I'll give you about a minute to answer what you see as those silver linings, the things that we can take away from this, and maybe end this on a positive note.
Well, when we turn the page on 2020 into 2021, we launched a campaign called Lead with Love. And as a company, we committed to doing 2021 acts of good in 2021. And this campaign was all about looking at the positive. And it was a call to action for all of us to come together, to do more and do better for our community, for each other, for the planet. And I really think this campaign exemplifies, what we're trying to do as a company and what we all hope for the future, which is that we can overcome this past year, and that we can demonstrate by these acts of good that there is a lot of positive in the world, and there is a lot of hope.
Thank you. So in the last minute here, I wanted to mention a key takeaway I heard from each of you. I'm struck by the similarities of your corporate challenges with leadership and your corporate response to the crises and what we face in the Department of Defense challenge here at NORAD and U.S. Northern Command. The challenges are the same: taking care of our people and making sure that our no-fail missions, or in your case, your no-fail products, get delivered to the consumers. On behalf of everybody that's dialed in right now, I think I'm safe in saying we're smarter for having listened to you. We didn't have to learn all these lessons ourselves. We can take advantage of the things that you brought to this. I'd like to say thank you very much, and I'll be a better leader for having listened to you. Thank you.
Thank you, General.
Thank you.